Two members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee who have both served in the United States military join me now. Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii, who is against militarily intervening in Syria, and Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, who backs the president's plan. Thank you both for being here. Thank you both for your service. Congressman Kinzinger, I'm going to start with you. You were one of the first to come out and back the plan for military strikes. What do you make of this third way being floated by Secretary Kerry, the Russians, et cetera?
Well, you know, look, these are the same Russians that vetoed any press release out of the United Nations, basically saying chemical weapons are bad, period. They're huge allies with Assad. They've protected Assad for a long time. I think we have to go forward and see if this way is going to work. But I think we have to put a timeline out. Say, okay, within the next week, you have to achieve this, this, and this. And then the next, you'll buy another week where you have to achieve these things. It's important to understand that the Russians may be trying to stall here and ensuring that they don't stall. But look, I mean, we have a responsibility now to see if we can disarm the Syrians through peaceful methods. So I hope it works.
Congresswoman, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's absolutely a positive development. And I think this third option is the option that the American people in particular have been looking for. They've been looking for leadership in this way to say what action can be taken against these heinous chemical weapons attacks that will actually be effective and will speak to the objective that we all agree on, which is to secure and eliminate the use of these chemical weapons. I think that the president moving forward with this, delaying the Senate vote, is a positive development, and Russia calling an emergency UN Security Council meeting today to start to work through the resolution is exactly the path that we need to be taking forward.
And I want to add to this whole thing. I mean, the reason we're here with the Russians potentially and the UN potentially making this breakthrough is because there was a threat of force, because the United States was serious about making the cost of using chemical weapons far exceed any benefit gain. And I think that is a huge testimony, frankly, to saying in some cases a strike like this is necessary. That's why I supported it, and that's why if there's stalling that goes on, I'd support taking action still.
But that implicitly is a criticism of the Congresswoman's position because she opposes the authorization. Congresswoman, how about it? The Congressman is saying that if it weren't for this serious threat being posed by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and President Obama, the Russians and the Syrians wouldn't even be talking peace.
I think it's debatable. I think that none of us sitting around a table can sit there and put ourselves into the minds of what is happening in Syria or what is happening within Russia. I think clearly the pressure that has started to build throughout the international community about the disdain for the use of these chemical weapons is really what's the focus here, and really changing the conversation so that the focus is more on how do we achieve this objective rather than looking at a U.S.-led military strike, which in my view not only will not meet the objective that's been laid out by the president, which is degrading and deterring Assad from using these chemical weapons again. I think the opposite effect could occur. We could see a very limited strike, unbelievably small, as Secretary Kerry said yesterday, that does not meet that intent and further emboldens other leaders to say this is actually a weak response that could further embolden the opposition forces, which include the terrorist factions, deal with a weakening Assad regime, a huge stockpile of chemical weapons, which could cause far worse damage, both within Syria and within the region if left to the outside or the unknown.
But Congresswoman, aren't you worried at all that if President Obama sets a red line on the use of chemical weapons and doesn't follow through in any way, that there isn't any punishment at all? I don't know if you consider taking away somebody's chemical weapons to be a punishment. Don't you worry that that hurts America's credibility, as President Obama argues?
I think the opposite question could be asked is, would it not be potentially irresponsible to take action against Syria just for the sake of saying we took action against Syria when that action could lead to something far worse, whether it be a regional conflict, whether it be a weakened Syrian regime and a strengthened opposition forces, which is made up of multiple terrorist factions who could have access to weapons and who have said very clearly their desire to hurt the United States and hurt the United States' interest. Again, I think it is our responsibility to exercise moral courage, to find that right solution. It's not a question of a military strike or complete and total inaction. The question is, we need to take effective action, and I think that's what we're seeing now occurring with the developments today within the UN.
Last question, Congressman. I just want to get your response to something Secretary of State John Kerry said today. He was adamant that he said, we're not, quote, going in to Syria. Take a listen.
We're not asking to go into Syria. I don't see any route by which we slide into going to Syria. I don't see the slippery slope. People say you're going to get dragged in. I do not see that.
What do you see, Congressman, as somebody who has skin in the game like the Congresswoman?
Well, I see a very punishing strike coming to Syria for doing what they shouldn't have done. We've had this red line for multiple years, and I think America's credibility, and not just the credibility of the president, the whole United States of America and what we've done for decades is at risk if we don't follow through. I hope they're disarmed through peaceful means. If they're not, we need to be ready to attack. And keep in mind, too, this whole idea of slippery slope. Israel has already had limited strikes on Syria a number of times already this year. It didn't start World War III. A very punishing strike by the United States saying you will not gas your own people will, I think, be very effective in deterring them from doing this in the future.
All right, Congressman Kinzinger and Congresswoman Gabbard, thank you both for being here, and thank you for your service to be continued. We'll have you back again to talk about this. I have a feeling it's not going